My neighbor wasn't who I thought he was. I found out too late. Hi, my name's Ryan. I live in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood in Ohio, the kind of place people move to when they want peace, safety, and a yard where their kids can play without worry. For most of my life, I believed my street was exactly that: safe, predictable, boring even. But what I discovered about the man living right next door changed me forever. And I need to tell someone, anyone, before the memories eat me alive. Part 1. The Friendly Neighbor. When I first moved into the neighborhood, my neighbor, let's call him Mr. Carter, was one of the first to greet me. He was in his mid-40s, soft-spoken, always neatly dressed, even just mowing the lawn. He had one of those reassuring smiles, the kind that made you feel like you'd known him for years. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said, handing me a 6-pack of craft beer. "If you need anything, I'm right here." He lived alone, which I thought was strange for a man his age, but I didn't pry. Sometimes you just assume people have their own private lives. Over the months, I noticed he was quiet, almost too quiet. He rarely had visitors. No family came around for the holidays. His blinds were always shut tight, even on sunny days. But he kept his lawn immaculate, waved at me whenever he saw me, and never made trouble. In a world full of loud, nosy, annoying neighbors, Mr. Carter was a dream. At least, that's what I thought. Part 2. The First Red Flag. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of banging. Not the kind of banging you hear when someone's fixing something. This was frantic, panicked. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. It was coming from Carter's house. At first, I thought maybe he'd dropped something, or maybe he was renovating. But then I heard something else, a muffled scream. It was quick, cut off almost instantly, like someone had clamped a hand over a mouth. I froze. I remember sitting there in the dark, holding my breath, listening so hard my ears hurt. Then silence. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. The next morning, Carter was outside, trimming his hedges, looking calm and collected as always. He waved at me with that same easy smile. "Morning, Ryan," he called. And for the first time, I didn't wave back. Part 3. Small Discoveries. Over the next few weeks, little things started piling up. I'd sometimes see Carter taking heavy black garbage bags to the curb, but never on trash days. When I peeked later, the bags would be gone. Strange smells drifted from his backyard shed, a mix of chemicals and something sour, metallic. Once I saw him hauling what looked like old furniture into his basement through the side door. But it didn't sound like furniture when it clattered down the steps. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was into taxidermy. Maybe he was just eccentric. But then came the night I saw him in the woods. Part 4. The Woods. There's a stretch of forest behind our houses, maybe a mile wide. Most neighbors never go in. It's thick, dark, and buggy. One night, unable to sleep, I looked out my back window and saw a flashlight beam cutting through the trees. It was Carter. He was dragging something behind him, something large, wrapped in what looked like a tarp. I pressed my forehead to the glass, trying to get a better look. My stomach turned as I realized how heavy it must have been. The way he strained, shoulders hunched, breath clouding in the cold air. The beam of his flashlight swept across his face for a second. His expression was blank, cold. That's when I knew. Whatever was under that tarp, it wasn't furniture. Part 5. Curiosity versus fear. I didn't call the cops right away. Why? Because Carter had built a reputation as the perfect neighbor. I was just the new guy. Imagine calling the police and saying, "Hey, I think my neighbor dragged a body into the woods." They'd laugh me off the phone. So I did what most people do when faced with something terrifying but uncertain. I told myself it was none of my business. I tried to ignore it, but ignoring Carter became impossible. Because the next time, I saw what was in one of those bags. Part 6. The Bag. It was raining hard that night. I was taking my trash out when I saw one of Carter's bags had ripped open by the curb. Something pale stuck out. Curiosity overpowered me. I glanced around, then walked over, crouching beside the bag. Inside was meat. At least, I thought it was meat at first. But it wasn't like any cut I'd seen in a grocery store. It was shaped wrong. Too human. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. Before I could react further, Carter stepped out onto his porch. He was holding an umbrella, staring at me. He didn't say a word, just watched me, his eyes dark, unreadable. I panicked, muttered something about the weather, and hurried back inside. That night, I barely slept. Part 7. The Basement. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. So one evening, when Carter left, dressed in his usual neat jacket, carrying his ever-present flashlight, I made the worst decision of my life. I broke into his house. It was easier than I expected. The back door's lock was old, and after a few minutes with a credit card, I was inside. The place was spotless. Too spotless. No photos, no decorations, just generic furniture. It looked like a model home, not a lived-in space. But then I found the basement door. The smell hit me first. Rot, bleach, metal. I forced myself down the creaking steps. And there, under a single flickering bulb, I saw them. Tables lined with tools. Jars filled with things I can't even describe. A freezer humming in the corner. And on the wall, photos. Photos of people, dozens of them. Some looked like they were taken from afar through windows. Others looked like they'd been taken here. In the center was an old recliner, and strapped to it with duct tape was a woman. Her eyes met mine, wide, terrified. She tried to scream, but something was stuffed in her mouth. I staggered back, my mind reeling. That's when I heard the creak of the basement steps. Part 8. The Escape. Carter was home. I dove behind a stack of boxes just as his flashlight beam cut across the room. "Ryan," he said softly, calmly, like we were just two neighbors chatting across the fence. "I know you're here." My pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. He walked closer, the beam sliding across the woman in the chair. She whimpered. "Nosy neighbors," Carter sighed. "Always the same." The moment his back turned, I bolted. I don't remember how I made it out, only the sound of his footsteps pounding behind me, the slam of the screen door as I tore across my yard and into my own house, locking every door, every window. I called 911 with shaking hands, screaming into the phone. By the time the police arrived, Carter was gone. Part 9. Aftermath. The basement was real. The woman was real. But Carter vanished into the night. The police searched for weeks, plastered his photo across the news, but he was always one step ahead. It was like he knew how to disappear. The woman survived, thank God. She'd been missing for weeks. Her story matched everything I'd seen, but Carter was never caught. And I still live here, in this same house. Every night, I wonder if he'll come back. Sometimes I wake up at 2 a.m., certain I hear banging, certain I see a flashlight beam cutting through the trees. And sometimes, I think I see him watching me from the woods.